I'm Logan Crawford, and right now on Spotlight, we're taking another look at the inspiring and heartfelt journey of raising a child with disabilities. We're delighted to welcome back to the show Christine Staple Ebanks, and she is talking again today about her powerful book, Raising Nathan Against All Odds, Discovering the Blessings, Joy, and Purpose in Raising a Child with Disabilities. This is a very moving narrative that highlights the resilience, faith, and family bonds that help the author navigate her son's challenging prognosis and defy the odds. Join us right now as we delve into the real, raw, and transformative insights Christine shares about her remarkable journey. We're delighted to have this very talented author join us here today on Spotlight. We thank the team at Books to Life Marketing for helping us put her in the spotlight today. And we ask viewers like you to support authors like her by subscribing to our channel and by purchasing her amazing book. The links are below this interview. Christine, thanks for joining us again today on Spotlight.
Thanks for having me. Thanks for having me, Logan.
Yes. My pleasure, my pleasure. Let's catch up the folks at home a little bit about Nathan's story, the folks who might have not seen part one. Nathan, right at birth, had medical concerns. Tell us about that.
So Nathan was diagnosed with a congenital diaphragmatic hernia while I was 5 months pregnant, and it required major surgery right after birth to correct it. So if it was not handled well, he could have died during the birthing process. But thankfully he did not, and he had surgery 3 days after birth, and it was really difficult for him because his body was so young, so his ability to recover, we were given a prognosis that he might not survive the surgery, and for a while it looked like that was going to be the case. And it really was our faith that really took us through that place of really believing that this child was here in purpose, for purpose, and believing that just the love and prayer and support would help him. And it did, and he pulled through. And he was sent home a month and a half after birth, and we thought that everything was over. But then I began to observe that he wasn't developing the way that he should. And I had to even fight to get that diagnosis because the doctors kept telling me, you know, based on what he's been through, that it was expected. And I kept saying, but there is something different about the development that was not taking place. And so eventually they took to heart what I asked, and he was diagnosed at 9 months with cerebral palsy.
Yeah. So cerebral palsy generally is a lack of oxygen during the birthing process, right?
Yes.
And that can lead to developmental delays and inabilities. And that's what Nathan suffers from, and probably a result from that surgery that he needed early on, right?
Yes, yes. We do believe that it was somewhere along that line that the trauma occurred, because the congenital diaphragmatic hernia constricted his left lung, so it was not inflated, and there was fluid in the lungs. And so the birthing orders were not followed, that he needed to have been incubated before the umbilical cord was cut. That never happened. And so there was a period of time between the birth and he was rushed on to the NICU unit that he may have lost oxygen, is what we believe. And yes, it is as a result of what happened after birth.
Absolutely. And he was born in Jamaica. And
yes.
Having a child with cerebral palsy in Jamaica was challenging, right? Tell us about that aspect of the story.
Very challenging. First and foremost, it took me a whole year to learn to pronounce cerebral palsy, and I felt like a horrible mother. How could I not be able to even explain what it was that my son was diagnosed with? But outside of the diagnosis, there was nothing else given except a list of all the things he will never, ever do. And the neurologist felt that that was a good time to give us that information, but I refused to accept that. And so I began to search for answers. I had no information on what cerebral palsy was, so I thought that it was a disease and he was going to die. And I also could not find any of the services that were recommended, like occupational, speech, physical therapy. I could not find any of those services available to him. And after a while, I actually changed his doctors to go to another doctor who had a little bit more experience with that condition, and he connected me to a physical therapy. And so for the first 2 years, that was the only access that he had for services and support. But after 2 years, I still found that I knew very little about the condition because we were not educated as parents. And I still didn't know what my role was to support this child. And so I said to my husband, you know, I need to go someplace where the medical professional know more about this disability so somebody can help me understand what do I need to expect, what do I need to know. And we fundraise, thank God for grandparents. We fundraised through the family and we took him to a facility in Florida. And that was when he got the first interdisciplinary type of assessment, about 9 specialists he saw. And I call that my ray of hope because each of them spent the time to sit with me to explain from their perspective what they think I needed to know. They provided us with an intervention plan for him at home. And I then became the specialist who started teaching everybody else back home how to support him.
It was very kind of you to take that knowledge that you gained from being in Florida with that team of experts and sharing it at home. And that actually began the formation of a foundation, right? To help
Yes, yes.
people
It
in your...
began the Nathan Ebanks Foundation because when I did that, I just wanted to find out if there were other people like me who were having a similar experience because I didn't know then what the condition was for others. And in doing that, I had just intended to do that one share and leave it. But I found that doctors learned about what I had done and they started sending parents to me to help counsel them and educate them about the condition and help to share my story in terms of how we were finding help for Nathan because we had to be trained to do a lot of the stuff in the absence of therapy. And so I had to learn and work with my family and my other children to incorporate some of the activities he needed to aid in his development in his everyday care. And the doctors wanted me to share that with other parents. And that started the genesis of the Nathan Ebanks Foundation, where for 15 years we worked to advocate for individuals with disabilities, to influence policy, to train parents, and just to educate society on large about the rights of persons with disabilities and about how to care for persons with disabilities.
Wonderful, wonderful. Definitely doing God's work in helping other parents in the same situation because you know how much confusion, you know how much pain, and you know how much love is involved. You love your child,
Yes.
you just want to help him, and you
Yes.
don't know how to get help or what kind of help to give. So this is a great foundation for sure, the Nathan Ebanks Foundation. At one point, you came to the United States. Tell us about that move.
So we moved to the United States after 15 years, 16 years in Jamaica. We had gotten to a point where Nathan had stagnated because his needs, because even though in a lot of ways developmentally, he was not catching up to his milestones, his needs were still significant and too much for us to handle in the way we were handling it when he was younger. And so the opportunity came for us to come to the United States as immigrants, and we did that. And in coming, I was so happy because finally we were in a place where services were available, and I thought it would have been smooth sailing. But that was not the case because I found that there are so much services available. There are so many different approaches to program that if as a parent you are not grounded in what your child needs and you are not understanding how the dots interconnect, that you really do have problems accessing the services even though they're available. And so what that did was step up my advocacy to a whole different level. But thankfully, because of the work that I'd been doing through the Nathan Ebanks Foundation in Jamaica, I had worked with a lot of specialists from here in the States, occupational, physical, speech, special educators. So each time I came upon a hurdle, living here and trying to help Nathan navigate the system for services and care, when I was done crying, because I cried a lot, you know, I can't find my way and nobody's able to help me, I was able to turn to them for guidance in sometimes even how to construct a letter to help others working with him understand how to better support him. And so I began to recognize that there was a need for parents to know and to understand the different pathways that are available to them and to provide different solutions through the experiences that we've had. And so these were some of the thoughts that went into the writing of this book.
Absolutely. The best doctors in the world are here in the United States. There's an abundance of care. The
Yes.
doctors, in many cases, are hyper specialized. You know,
Yes.
they're not just a cardiac doctor or a cardiologist, but they specialize on just one valve, which is
Yes.
wonderful because you're getting such terrific expertise. But like you
Mhm.
said, navigating the healthcare system in the United States is confusing. And
Mhm.
often you have to get around a bureaucracy just to
Mhm.
access the doctors. You meet the
Yes.
doctors, they're wonderful, they're
Oh,
caring, they're
yes.
attentive, and they're loving. But
Yes.
trying to get past that nurse to get an appointment, it can be
Yes.
very, very
And
tough.
yes, and I remember after we moved here, because we don't have access to wheelchairs in Jamaica. And so we would buy the wheelchairs from here and they would come down to Jamaica disassembled in parts. And you have to find somebody to try to put them apart. And oftentimes the wheelchairs fell apart because we didn't have with him in it, because we didn't have the expertise. So when we got here and, we were trying to find who provide wheelchair services, we could not. And when I called the insurance company and they told me who to call, none of them provided in our neighborhood. And while we were trying to navigate this, the chair had been falling apart. And then one day I got a call from school that says, "Hey, Nathan's wheelchair broke in two." So the two parts of the wheelchair came home and we weren't driving. So we had to now find transportation to go pick him up, to bring him here. So those were some of the challenges that we have. And then when you did find the company, they tell you, "Oh, you can't get an appointment outside of 6 months." And you're saying, but he doesn't have a wheelchair now and he's unable to sit unsupported. So he needs the wheelchair for navigation as well as for feeding and for participating in learning. And none of that could take place until we were able to get that appointment. And then it was another 6 months wait before you actually get the wheelchair. And so those are lots of parts, moving parts that become very frustrating in terms of what do you do. But thankfully, because we were living in Jamaica where we didn't have the resource, we learned to be very creative.
Right.
And we learned to find solutions. And so in a lot of ways, that's what we had to do. Transform the living room in a roll space for Nathan with, pillow tops on the floor so that he could be moving around. It took 3 of us to feed him. So we just had to be very creative. And that's a message that I want to say to parents, that you won't always find what you're looking for in the way that you need to have it, but life still goes on. And so within us, we are creative and resourceful people, and within us is the answer to what we need to support our children.
Absolutely, absolutely. Tell us a little bit about what Nathan's life is like now. He just turned 20, which is a wonderful
Yes,
milestone.
yes.
Tell us about that.
So Nathan's life is fantastic. He will tell you that. He is able to communicate more using a communication device, augmented communication device, which is an iPad with pictures on it. So he's able to communicate, "I want," and the page flips to eat, and then he's able to make his choices. So it's giving him access to express himself, because we always knew that his receptive communication skills were strong. He understood what was said to him, but because he's nonverbal, being able to tell us what he's feeling, tell us if he's having a pain, tell us if he wants to go outside, he wasn't able to express that. And so with the communication board that largely is in part to the system and the speech therapists at school and us working together to help him learn the device, he's able to communicate all of that. Nathan participates in unified bowling. So he has several bowling trophies, right? And I was just so amazed when I saw how there's a little ramp that he has and the ball is on it and he uses one finger and shove it off and it rolls down the aisle.
Great.
And, whenever he gets a strike, he goes, "Yay!" And everybody has to celebrate with him. So he's involved in his community. He goes out to job experience, and on his iPad, he goes to the senior center and his job is to greet them. And so he can press the button on his iPad that says, "Hi, my name is Nathan. How are you?" And the person answers, and then he can tell them goodbye. So he has a better quality of life. He has a quality of life where just this amazing community of people are around him who love and support him, and he gets to go out and do what he wants to do. And of course, he tells you what he wants, when he doesn't want it. And so he's able to really access life in a way that was not possible before.
Absolutely. Over your shoulder, there's a lovely picture of Nathan surrounded by your
His
beautiful
siblings.
family.
Thank you.
And that's what I want to talk to you a little bit about now, is when Nathan gets a diagnosis like this, it's not just him getting the diagnosis. It's basically the whole family
Whole
has an issue
family.
to cope with. Tell us about how
Yeah.
you handled it, what the initial
Yes.
reactions were like, and what's it like now.
Well, the beautiful part was that we were never told, and nowhere with a diagnosis does anyone anywhere sit down the family to explain that this is a family diagnosis and not just a child. Most systems wrap around the child and they may wrap around the mother. And in our case, it just wrapped around Nathan. But when we were leaving the hospital after his initial surgery, there was a older matron who'd been working for a long time in England, and she had worked with children like Nathan. And she said to me when we were leaving, "The best gift you have given to your child is his siblings," because the oldest was 8, the second one was 6, and the youngest was 4 at the time he was born. And she said, "He's going to be fragile for a while, but when you go home, introduce him to his siblings, let them be part of his life, let them play with him, let them help out, don't withhold him from them because he's going to need them." And that's what we did, not recognizing that the siblings themselves were so happy to be able to contribute to their brother's life, that the siblings themselves, because a lot of adjustments had to be made in their lives to accommodate his needs. Things like we ran out of money because I stopped working, and so money became limited. So things that they were accustomed to doing, they couldn't do it anymore. So it became a family unit in terms of how we have conversations about what we're going to do, how we're going to spend the money that we have. They had a decision in it. And as a result, it bonded the whole family. But interestingly, when I was doing this book, I actually interviewed my husband and the children to get their perspective. And I was hearing about their coping and their anxieties and all that was happening to them during the process that I never knew before, because somehow we just never spoke about those issues at all. We just kept moving forward. And so it helped me to realize that, and I've done the research, and very, very few books or literature actually brings in the family perspective. And I think it's a missing link because it better helps the families understand that disability impacts the whole family. And it also will help people to be able to understand what are some of the things that they can do to involve the family, and what are some of the things that they can do to help the individual with the disability to integrate with the rest of the siblings. I've had a lot of parents who have said to me over the years, because I do counsel parents, who've said to me, how did you get your children to be so involved in Nathan's life? And I said it started at the beginning. And they were always a part. We never told them no. We never thought that they couldn't do anything. We just showed them how. And then we were there to supervise. And as a result, they are so much his parents that they're now telling us, "No, mom, you can't do that. He is this way, so you have to do it this way." So they kind of will guide us now, in terms of how to care for him. But everybody is vested in his life. And I also included the voice of Nathan, because most of the books that I read as well, it spoke, unless it was written by the person with disabilities, it tend to only speak about the person with disabilities. But Nathan is his own unique self, and he loves to tell people who he is. His communication device is really set up with a lot of him communicating his likes and dislikes. And so I felt it was important to allow him to introduce himself in the book. And so the things that we always have to share about him when we meet a new provider or a new person, to help them understand who he is so they can relate to him, we share that in the book. And when it was done and I read it back to him and I said to him, "Is this what you want me to include?" He gave me thumbs way up, which is yes, I'm okay with that.
Great. In many ways, it helped your children
Yes.
because I think it developed another side of them that most children don't have. Most
Yes.
children by nature are not nurturing, are
Yes.
not compassionate, are not
Yes.
empathetic, but
Yes.
they were put into a situation where they're not going to be in competition with their little brother, but they're there to help their little brother.
Yes.
So it's kind of a
Yes.
unique relationship, right?
It is, and it also encouraged a career choice because his younger sister, well, older, we'll call her his little big sister because he's taller than her, but she's older than him. But
Right.
my younger daughter, she actually just graduated with her master's in speech language pathology. And she entered that field because of him, because she was the one that was tasked to help him with school assignments. And she had to figure out from the age of 8 how to have him communicate what he knows, and he's nonverbal. So that sparked her interest into helping other children in that regard. And she's just amazing in that field. And his older sister, which is older, she went into psychology
Wow.
because she was the one who, when Daddy and I were at the hospital with Nathan, or we were off somewhere, for an appointment, she was the one who had to speak to her younger siblings. She had to calm them, she had to support them. And of course, my oldest son, he's into computer technology because he wants to find different ways to help Nathan communicate. So I found that having Nathan in their lives also helped, as you say, to direct them, to build empathy and compassion, because Nathan is home today while I'm doing this interview, and his older brother is home with him so that he can be off, doing something, so that, we're not taking time out of his day with anything that I have to do. So it has become a tight-knitted family unit because of Nathan.
Wonderful, wonderful. And it's a beautiful family, like I said, depicted in
Thank
that
you.
picture there. It's a great, great shot. Those are all the siblings, right?
Those are all the
All
siblings,
the
yes.
siblings. Yep.
Yeah.
Wonderful, wonderful, beautiful family. Let me ask you this. We talked a little bit about the bureaucracy of the American medical system. Can you give us a couple of hacks that might help us navigate it better? Like, how did you finally break through? How did you get access to the care that you needed and the doctors you needed and so forth?
So the best resource is actually sent from the school's perspective every time. Once your child has access or is eligible for special education services, there is a prize document that is sent at the bottom of the email of every teacher who will communicate with you. Read that document, because that document outlines the rights of your child. It outlines your rights as a parent, and it also guides you to what services you should be considering. The second thing is I join online support group within the community
Mhm.
who are dealing with children specific with my son's age and who are having special education services. I've found parents to be one of the greatest source of information. And you can just drop a question. I would drop a question. So Nathan ages out of school next year. He's going to be 21. What do I need to be considering? And all of these wealth of resource come back. People are sending you a link. They're sending you a booklet. They're sending you information. And people are helping you understand how to navigate the services. The local library and community center also was a very good resource because we found the social recreation therapy program there. And within that program are students who are from 13 to late 30s. And so they're younger than Nathan, older than Nathan. So I have both to rely on in terms of information. And so these network of people are where I'm able to share information and get information. Lastly, the Special Education Parent Advisory Group, the CPAC group, it is mandated by law that every district has a group of parents whose children are receiving special ed service. I really encourage parents to join that group, because the things that you can't get done by yourself, you can get it done as a collective. And so I've just kind of learned what that support system look like, and to kind of find out where those are available and to jump into those support systems. And I mean, it has just been so much easier for us to access and move through services since.
Absolutely. Well, that is great advice, a laundry list of things that parents should be doing to access the best care for their children. So
Yes.
thank you for that. Let's talk a little bit about faith. Did faith play a role in navigating
Oh my
life?
goodness.
Yeah.
I don't know what I would have done without my faith.
Right.
The way I put it is this way. So my faith was there before Nathan. We were practicing our faith, and our children grew up in Sunday school and that kind of stuff. But Nathan took it to a different level because I found my faith was out there. So it was something I knew about. But with
Right.
Nathan, I had to bring it in to our everyday situation. So, for instance, when I sat with a neurologist and he started telling us all the things we could never ever do, and I felt panic rising, I started writing. And the neurologist said to me, I don't think you're taking this seriously. And I said, I am. But since you're not the final authority, I'm going to take this to my authority. And I went home with all of the reports and I spread it at the foot of my bed and I went down on my knees and I say, God, this is what man say. What do you say? And it has been that kind of way that I have been, just practicing my faith in every situation we come against. I pray and I say, Lord, just guide me. Sometimes it's a song. Sometimes somebody call me. Sometimes it's an email that crossed my path that brings the answer that I'm looking for. And I have found that it is also my faith that has helped me to be able to turn around and do something with what we're going through, because I've understood that there's purpose in everything that we're doing. And I was in marketing before, and I actually moved away from that to get into social advocacy work as a result. And so I found that Nathan anchored my faith, and he made my faith more practical for me. So many Bible verses that I read that never made sense to me before. It came alive in my situation. I remember even when he was going through that surgery at 3 days old, somebody kept sending me a text and it kept saying, he will live and not die. I did not know what that was, but I held on to it. It anchored in my heart. And years later, I was reading the Bible and there it was in Psalm 18, I shall not die but live to declare the glory of God. I did not know that existed, but that became an anchor. And every time he faced a situation where he looked like he would not make it, and he has faced many of those, that word came back. And it held my faith and held my confidence, and it informed my prayer and my belief system. And so I have found that Nathan has been good for my faith. But also, Nathan himself is such a young man of faith. He is such a young man. When they asked me at school, what does Nathan like, what music he listens to, he only listens to gospel music. And it's not because they have not tried, but he has a preference and there is a love that he has of God. When he goes to church and he's worshiping and he holds his hands up, people are just amazed at the love that this young man, it just pours out of his body. My mother calls him an evangelist. And so faith has been a really instrumental part of our journey. And I say to people, you have to believe in something greater than yourself in order to face some of the issues in life that you find that you have to face.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's hard to go it alone,
Hard.
and I
Yeah.
know the reaction sometimes is to get angry with God. Why me? Why did you let this happen?
Mhm.
But
Oh,
we're
I
not.
did that too.
Yeah.
I did that too, but I never stayed there. And that's what
Good.
I love about God, because he allows you to be you. He allows you to feel your feelings. And after I was done, and then he gave me there was an incident where I had a dream and I saw Nathan being in another's place, not my child. And when I saw the way his body was and how broken it looked, I woke up from that dream thanking God for my child. And so I began to ask, why not me? But it was a process to move from why me to why not me. And I want to say to parents that, that too will pass. Whatever you're feeling over time, you feel your feelings, but over time you'll be able to process it in a way where you begin to see the joys. It starts with the little things and then it gets bigger, where you begin to see the joy of having this remarkable human being in your life.
Exactly. You wouldn't love him any less
No,
or any more if he
no,
was different than he is now. I mean, you
yes.
love Nathan, the essence of Nathan. It doesn't matter if he walks, it doesn't matter. I mean, you obviously would love for him to walk, but he doesn't walk. You've accepted
Yes,
that,
yes,
and this is what God has given you, and you're dealing with it, and more than dealing with it, you're thriving with it, which is
yes,
great. Like I said, just look at that picture there. It's wonderful. A great
yes,
reminder
thank you.
that life can be very happy, and life does not have to be derailed because of a diagnosis that nobody
Yes,
ever expected or wants. The name of the
yes,
book is Raising Nathan Against All Odds, Discovering the Blessings, Joy, and Purpose in Raising a Child with Disabilities. That really says it all. There are blessings
yes,
in it, there is joy in it, and there is purpose. And
yes,
our author today has not only found her purpose by raising Nathan, but I think her siblings have as well. And so has his dad. Wonderful,
yes.
wonderful work on this
Thank
interview,
you.
wonderful work on this book. Christine, thanks so much for joining us here today on Spotlight.
Thank you so much for having me, Logan.
I appreciate your time. To the folks at home, I'm Logan Crawford, thanking you for your time, this time and next time on Spotlight. And don't forget to pick up this wonderful book. It is called Raising Nathans Against All Odds. The links are below this interview.